Chapter 10. Growing Complications.
The greenhouse walls curved upward like crystalline ribs, their translucent surfaces filtering alien starlight into shifting patterns. The air hung thick with the weight of distant worlds. Desert heat bled through dimensional barriers. Arctic winds carried scents of ancient ice. I sought refuge among the botanical specimens, my throat still tender from Grimjaw's demonstration of pack hierarchy. Scattered across the workbench lay leather-bound journals, their pages filled with precise handwriting documenting centuries of impossible cultivation. Each entry detailed attempts at genetic combinations that violated natural law, failure notes written in scripts that predated human languages. The dedication required for such patient research staggered me. Lifespans measured in geological ages applied to problems that would challenge entire university departments. One particular entry caught my attention, its diagrams showing hybrid attempts between Arcturian starfruit and terrestrial apple stock. 47 failures documented across decades of effort, each accompanied by detailed analysis of why incompatible species had rejected grafting attempts. The challenge called to something deeper than curiosity. My mother's botanical legacy recognized problems that demanded solving regardless of previous failures. The necessary tools waited nearby, their crystalline surfaces responding to my touch with intelligent warmth. I selected specimens with hands that remembered Vera Ashworth's teachings, feeling for cellular compatibility through pure instinct, honed by years of coaxing life from hostile soil. The first 3 attempts failed spectacularly. Chemical reactions between incompatible tissues produced staining that left my fingertips purple for hours, the rejected grafts dissolving into components unknown to earthly chemistry. But failure only sharpened focus inherited from a woman who'd made impossible things grow in settlement gardens where hope itself was luxury. The 4th attempt felt different from the moment blade touched bark. Starlight silver tissue seemed to welcome terrestrial heartwood, dimensional energies finding harmony through techniques that bridged gaps between worlds with surgical precision. I watched in breathless wonder as the union held, cellular integration proceeding with impossible speed.
The tiny hybrid pulsed with contained power, its leaves already showing the distinctive shimmer of successful dimensional cultivation. Energy flowed through its microscopic vascular system like captured lightning, creating patterns that hurt to observe directly yet drew the eye.
That should not be possible.
The voice came from the greenhouse entrance, carrying no accusation, only wonder tinged with respect. I turned to find Kaelan watching from the doorway, his massive frame silhouetted against corridor lighting. His amber eyes fixed on the impossible graft with intensity that made the air seem heavier. When divine senses catalogued what mortal hands had accomplished, something shifted in his scarred features. Recognition of skill he hadn't expected to find in a desperate thief who'd violated his territory.
Show me again,
He commanded, but his tone held request rather than demand.
The 2nd attempt succeeded even more readily, my fingers seeming to know instinctively where dimensional barriers were weakest. The starfruit tissue welcomed terrestrial DNA with enthusiasm, as if these combinations had been waiting eons for proper introduction. When I looked up from successful grafting, his expression had transformed into something I couldn't identify. Not quite admiration, but acknowledgement that my abilities went beyond simple luck or accident. The recognition felt like sunlight after decades of shadow. Someone finally seeing value in knowledge I'd carried since childhood. An hour later, he returned with arms full of journals and scrolls, their weight speaking of centuries of patient observation. Ancient texts bound in materials that had never grown on earthly trees, their pages inscribed with techniques predating human civilization.
if you can succeed where I have failed.
He said, depositing the materials on my workbench with reverence usually reserved for holy relics.
Perhaps there are other impossibilities waiting to be proven wrong.
The gesture felt like trust offered tentatively, bridges built from mutual respect for botanical mysteries. For the first time since my arrival, I glimpsed the researcher beneath the warrior. A curious mind that had spent 4 centuries pushing boundaries of what gods thought possible. I opened the nearest journal, its pages revealing diagrams that challenged every assumption about genetic compatibility. Species from worlds whose names existed only in divine memory, their cellular structures analyzed with precision. Each failure had been documented with meticulous care, building foundation of knowledge that could support revolutionary breakthroughs. The protein synthesis patterns here, I murmured, tracing diagrams showing molecular interactions impossible under earthly conditions. If you adjusted the dimensional resonance frequency during initial cell division, his amber gaze sharpened with attention that made my nervous system sing with recognition of intelligence that matched my own.
Explain.
The conversation that followed became collaborative exploration of possibilities neither of us had considered alone. His centuries of experience provided framework supporting my intuitive understanding of how life adapted to impossible conditions. Together, we mapped pathways through genetic incompatibility that had stymied previous attempts. Hours passed unmeasured in spaces where time flowed differently. The greenhouse around us filled with failed experiments and sudden breakthroughs, the air crackling with energy released by successful dimensional grafting. My hands grew more confident with each attempt, reading compatibility through senses that processed information beyond normal human perception. Then lightning crackled across clear mountain air, dimensional barriers rippling with arriving power that set my teeth on edge. The energy carried familiar signatures, divine presence materializing with authority that made reality bend.
Through the greenhouse's crystalline walls, a figure emerged from spaces between dimensions. Tall, ethereal, bearing unmistakable presence of cosmic authority operating on levels above local divine politics. Her flowing robes seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating darkness that somehow radiated its own terrible illumination.
Kaelan Worldbreaker.
Her voice rewrote local physics with each syllable.
The Seraph grow impatient with your delays.
The botanical journals scattered across my workbench suddenly felt like evidence of crimes against cosmic order. Whatever research we'd been conducting, whatever breakthroughs had emerged from collaborative effort, they apparently violated protocols established by powers that treated gods like middle management. Kaelan's response came swift and protective, his massive frame interposing itself between divine messenger and my hiding place among crystalline equipment.
The work proceeds according to established timelines. Interference serves no constructive purpose.
But his words carried strain, pressures beyond my comprehension. Whatever game the Seraph played through their earthly representatives, it involved stakes that could reshape existence according to designs I'd been chosen to serve rather than understand.
The goddess circled closer, her presence making the greenhouse's impossible specimens wither at edges where reality grew thin beneath cosmic attention.
Time grows short for delays born of sentiment. The host of heaven requires results, not excuses wrapped in protective instincts.
The accusation hung between them like a suspended blade over everything we'd discovered through collaborative research. Sentiment, emotional attachment that cosmic authority considered weakness, undermining rational judgment. Whatever connection had developed through shared botanical passion, it threatened purposes larger than individual preference. Through crystalline barriers, I watched two divine beings negotiate terms that would determine whether scientific breakthroughs continued or ended, according to bureaucratic requirements imposed by powers whose patience measured in cosmic rather than mortal time. The journals waited on my workbench, their secrets half revealed through collaboration above species barriers and authority structures. But cosmic politics pressed down on the greenhouse like gathering avalanche, promising consequences for research that apparently violated established protocols. Whatever we'd discovered together, whatever impossibilities had proven achievable through combined knowledge, they existed at the mercy of forces that viewed gods as controlled assets rather than independent beings. The Seraph's messenger had delivered reminders about cosmic hierarchy that reduced individual initiative to dangerous rebellion. As divine negotiation continued in frequencies beyond human comprehension, I realized our botanical collaboration had triggered attention from powers that preferred their authority unchallenged by breakthroughs emerging from unauthorized research. The mountain breathed around us with rhythm of intelligence, monitoring every discovery, every successful graft, every moment when mortal knowledge combined with divine capability to achieve what neither could accomplish alone. Our growing partnership had become complication in cosmic designs that required resolution, according to priorities I couldn't influence or escape.
Chapter 11. Hidden Truths.
The crystalline greenhouse walls filtered alien starlight into prismatic patterns that danced across my workbench. 3 days had passed since the Divine Messenger's arrival, and Kaelan's research journals consumed my attention with fevered intensity. Each page revealed botanical impossibilities achieved through centuries of patient experimentation. Dimensional grafts that shouldn't survive the transition between worlds. Hybrid specimens that bridged gaps separating entire evolutionary trees. The familiar rhythm of cataloging plant varieties soothed nerves still raw from cosmic politics I barely understood. My mother's legacy provided anchor in seas of divine complexity. But the mountain held secrets that whispered through ventilation systems designed by ancient intelligence. Voices drifted down from terrace levels above, carried on currents of air that tasted of ozone and distant storms. The words themselves remained indistinct, but their urgency pressed against my consciousness. I set aside the journal documenting failed attempts at crystalline organic fusion and moved closer to the ventilation grate. The metal grillwork had been crafted from materials that existed in dimensions adjacent to normal space, their surfaces reflecting infinite depths.
Grimjaw's distinctive growl filtered through the system, her voice sharp with urgency that made my enhanced survival instincts prickle.
Security must be perfect when they arrive,
She was saying to another pack member whose rumbling bass belonged to a throat designed for inhuman frequencies.
3 days. Exchange.
The response came in short, clipped growls.
Raw material. Refined product. Alpha cannot. Delays.
The unfamiliar terminology sent ice through my veins despite the greenhouse's carefully maintained warmth. Exchange, a transaction rather than simple divine politics. Raw material, such an impersonal word for what I suspected to be the actual lives of people reduced to a mere ingredient in a trade. I pressed closer to the ventilation grate, my enhanced hearing straining to capture conversations that might explain the forces governing my existence within this mountain sanctuary. The botanical specimens around me seemed to lean inward, their alien consciousness somehow attuned to information beyond their terrestrial origins.
If that damned girl hadn't stolen the ripe specimens from the southern grove.
Grimjaw continued, her voice heavy with bitter regret that made my stomach clench.
We might have avoided this necessity entirely. Those apples were nearly ready. Another few days, and they could have sustained him without requiring the trade.
Understanding crashed over me like an avalanche of revelation. The stolen apples weren't just miraculous fruit. They were lifelines in a cosmic economy that reduced gods to controlled assets, dependent on resources distributed by higher authorities. My desperate theft to save dying children had forced Kaelan into some terrible bargain with consequences I was only beginning to grasp.
Through the greenhouse's transparent barriers, storm clouds gathered around mountain peaks that pierced amber skies. The weather patterns moved with purpose beyond natural meteorology, their formations responding to divine will rather than atmospheric pressure.
Raw material.
The subordinate pack member observed, his voice carrying disgust.
Seraph. They're clean words for dirty business.
The casual mention of cosmic hierarchy sent shivers through my enhanced nervous system. Whatever exchange approached, it involved powers that treated gods like middle management and mortals as renewable components in equations balanced by bureaucratic necessity.
Grimjaw's responding snarl carried experience with cosmic cruelty that brooked no mercy for inconvenient sentiment.
The Worldbreaker has served faithfully across centuries of campaigns. His reputation protects him only so far, and recent complications have drawn unwanted attention from higher authorities.
The weight of implications settled on my consciousness like burial shroud woven from guilt and growing comprehension. My theft had triggered consequences that reached beyond simple punishment into realms of cosmic politics, where individual lives carried value only as statistical components in calculations spanning multiple dimensions.
The host of heaven grows impatient with delays.
The subordinate continued, his words carrying echoes of divine messenger who delivered ultimatum wrapped in false courtesy.
3 days to complete arrangements, or face intervention that reduces choice to illusion.
I stumbled away from the ventilation grate, my hands shaking as botanical journals scattered across the workbench like evidence of crimes against cosmic order. The mountain around me no longer felt like sanctuary. It was processing facility where divine beings maintained their existence through systematic harvesting of resources that once breathed with individual consciousness. The golden apples I'd stolen to save dying children had been insurance against participation in economies that treated awareness itself as commodity, to be refined and redistributed according to specifications established by powers whose patience was measured in geological rather than mortal time. Through crystalline walls that filtered light from alien constellations, I watched preparations for transaction rather than simple divine politics. Lycanthropes moved with military precision through corridors that existed in spaces larger than their physical dimensions, their amber eyes reflecting knowledge of purposes beyond pack loyalty. The greenhouse's impossible specimens seemed to sense my growing horror, their alien consciousness responding to emotional distress with movements that violated botanical behavior. Flowers turned toward me with predatory awareness, while vines swayed without wind in patterns of complex communication networks carrying information beyond my ability to interpret. 3 days until whatever exchange would reshape existence according to cosmic requirements I couldn't influence or escape. 3 days to understand forces that had been set in motion by desperate love for children who now lived because golden fruit had purchased their survival with prices that compounded across dimensions. The mountain breathed around me with rhythm of intelligence monitoring every heartbeat, every moment of growing comprehension, every fragment of truth assembled from conversations never meant for mortal ears. I was no longer just prisoner in paradise built from science beyond natural law. I was witness to cosmic economy that reduced consciousness itself to renewable resource, where gods maintained their existence through participation in systems that treated individual identity as inconvenient complication in bureaucratic processes spanning multiple realities. The children lived, but the price demanded for that miracle was about to be extracted from reservoirs of awareness that once belonged to beings who'd possessed hopes and dreams, and the ability to love desperately enough to steal fire from gods. The botanical journals waited on my workbench, their secrets half revealed through collaboration above species barriers and authority structures. But cosmic deadlines pressed down on the greenhouse like gathering storm, promising resolution of accounts that had been accumulating interest across decades of divine service. Whatever exchange approached, it would reshape everything according to purposes I'd been chosen to witness rather than influence. The mountain's heart held secrets that whispered of powers operating beyond mortal comprehension, where individual lives carried meaning only as components in calculations that balanced cosmic books through methods too terrible for sanity to process completely. 3 days. The countdown had begun, and I was about to discover what prices cosmic authority extracted from those who dared disturb established order through desperate attempts to save the innocent from forces beyond their ability to resist or understand.
Chapter 12. First Major Setback.
The roar that erupted from the mountain's depths shattered crystalline fixtures throughout the greenhouse, their harmonious chiming replaced by discordant crashes of divine fury, beyond mortal comprehension. Stone foundations trembled beneath my feet as sound waves carrying concentrated rage reverberated through passages carved from living rock.
So close!
The voice possessed harmonics that made reality itself seem to recoil, each syllable etched with bitter centuries of patient cultivation.
Days away from freedom, and now they demand triple essence for last-minute arrangements.
Splintering furniture punctuated his words, followed by nervous whines of lycanthropes seeking distance from their alpha's wrath. Through the greenhouse walls, I could see pack members retreating to far corners of their common areas, amber eyes wide with recognition of fury that went beyond their ability to offer comfort. I pressed my back against the crystalline barrier, my enhanced hearing cataloging destruction barely contained by architectural limits designed to withstand divine tantrums.
Wooden beams crafted from trees older than human civilization cracked like kindling. Metal fixtures wrought by unknown techniques bent and twisted into abstract sculptures of frustrated rage.
Understanding crashed over me like an avalanche. The stolen apples weren't just research specimens. They were liberation itself, and I had unknowingly destroyed his chance at independence from the cosmic economy that was about to extract its pound of flesh from reservoirs of consciousness I couldn't bear to contemplate. The greenhouse door admitted figures that moved with fluid grace despite their inhuman proportions. 6 beings in robes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, their faces hidden beneath hoods that revealed only glimpses of features belonging to no earthly evolutionary tree. They flowed across the terraced gardens like liquid shadow, their presence making the impossible specimens wither at edges where reality grew thin. Behind them came payment that made my stomach clench. Racks upon racks of glass containers stacked in crates designed for precious cargo, each vessel filled with liquid that gleamed like captured dewdrops reflecting alien starlight. But these weren't simple containers holding ordinary substance. Each vial pulsed with warm luminescence of essence, distilled from sources I didn't want to contemplate. Thousands of them arranged in precise formation, their contents representing condensed consciousness that had been refined through processes too terrible for sanity to examine closely. The delegation's leader gestured with movements that hurt to observe directly. Dimensional mathematics made manifest through choreographed precision of intelligence operating beyond 3-dimensional limitations. From crystalline containers that defied physics, they produced single vial containing beauty so profound it made my enhanced vision water with involuntary tears. Refined ambrosia. The most terrible and magnificent substance I had ever witnessed. Liquid gold that seemed to hold captured starlight within its translucent depths, swirling with patterns of infinite complexity compressed into finite space. The surface reflected depths of power beyond mortal comprehension, energy that could sustain gods or transform mortals according to cosmic specifications.
When Kaelan emerged from the palace levels above, his massive frame moved with careful control, a volcano barely contained. The destruction left in his wake painted abstract murals across surfaces that had witnessed centuries of divine occupation. Twisted metal, shattered stone, crystalline fragments that caught light and threw it back in prismatic warnings about the consequences of disturbing established order.
His amber eyes fixed on the single vial with expression I couldn't decipher. Hunger warred with revulsion across scarred features that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, creating internal conflict between necessity and moral comprehension.
For the briefest moment, hesitation flickered across divine features. Some fragment of conscience that recoiled from participating in economies built on systematic harvesting of consciousness. Then, cosmic necessity reasserted itself, and he reached for the container with hands that had reshaped continents through controlled violence.
The refined ambrosia flowed down his throat like liquid starlight seeking union with divinity that required regular nourishment to maintain its existence beyond natural limitations. I watched power surge through his frame like visible fire. Divine essence reinforced through consumption of awareness that had been processed into forms that sustained immortal biology. The transformation was immediate and horrifying. Energy that had been depleted through centuries of service blazed forth renewed, his amber eyes becoming furnaces that burned with intensity, capable of penetrating dimensional barriers. His very presence began to warp local reality, the air itself bending around divine authority that operated according to unknown physics. But the true horror lay in the mathematics of exchange. Those thousands of crates, each containing vials of extracted essence, what had once been people, now reduced to glowing liquid. Human consciousness processed into industrial components, their memories and dreams distilled into fuel for divine existence. Individual identity had become nothing more than renewable resource in a cosmic economy. I fled from the greenhouse in disgust and rage that threatened to overwhelm enhanced nervous systems designed to process information beyond normal human limitations. My feet carried me toward lower gardens where alien specimens swayed in winds that obeyed different meteorological principles, their twisted beauty suddenly seeming honest compared to the cosmic abomination that treated sentient beings as currency. The terraced pathways adjusted their configuration automatically to accommodate my desperate flight, livingstone flowing like water to provide passage towards spaces where botanical impossibilities offered refuge from revelations too terrible for sanity to process completely. Behind me, the exchange continued according to protocols established across cosmic ages, bureaucratic machinery operating with efficiency that reduced moral considerations to inconvenient complications. But the mountain's hidden life responded to my emotional distress with movement of intelligence, monitoring every reaction, every fragment of horror assembled from witnessing transactions that sustained divine existence through systematic processing of consciousness itself. Something had detected my flight through corridors that existed in dimensions adjacent to normal space. The creature that emerged from shadows between terraced gardens belonged to no evolutionary tree I could identify. 6 limbs supported a form covered in chitinous plates that reflected rainbow patterns when caught by light from alien constellations, each surface bearing geometric designs that hurt to observe directly. Multiple eyes tracked my movement with calculating precision of intelligence, operating beyond instinctual predation. It had sensed the ambrosia consumption from whatever distant dimension it called home, drawn by psychic resonance of divine power like predator following scent trails that led to wounded prey. The creature moved with purpose beyond simple hunger, its alien consciousness recognizing opportunity presented by enhanced mortal fleeing through territory where normal protective barriers had been weakened by cosmic transaction. I ran through botanical impossibilities that should have provided sanctuary, my enhanced reflexes barely adequate for navigating terrain that shifted subtly when observed directly. The alien predator pursued with movements of familiarity with dimensional mathematics, its multiple limbs carrying it across surfaces that existed in spaces larger than their physical dimensions allowed. Improvised weapons proved pathetic against armor that turned aside mortal tools with contemptuous ease. A grafting blade designed for cutting through hybrid tissue, shards of crystalline pottery that had held specimens from distant worlds, a fallen branch from dimensional oak. All useless against protection that operated according to principles beyond earthly metallurgy. The creature's mandibles clicked with anticipation as it cornered me against greenhouse walls that filtered light from impossible stars. Its alien intelligence calculated optimal approach angles, while multiple eyes cataloged resistance from prey that possessed enhanced biology but lacked weapons capable of penetrating chitinous defense systems. Death approached wearing rainbow armor and multiplied vision, promising dissolution of consciousness through methods that would leave nothing identifiable of the person who dared steal fire from gods. I closed my eyes and thought of Tommy Crane's gap-toothed grin, of Marcus Webb chasing butterflies through settlement ruins, of children who lived because desperate love had challenged cosmic order. At least some good had emerged from this nightmare economy that treated awareness as renewable resource. At least dying children had been granted life through theft that had triggered consequences spanning multiple dimensions. The creature's death came with violence that redefined every concept I'd possessed about the application of divine power to cosmic problems. Kaelan materialized like wrath given form and terrible purpose, his frame blazing with ambrosia-enhanced energy that could reshape reality through simple application of immortal will. No weapons were required, no struggle ensued. The alien predator simply ceased to exist, its chitinous form reduced to component atoms that scattered on winds, carrying sense of dimensions where rainbow armor provided no protection against beings whose power came through bureaucratic necessity. He stood amid the space where threat had existed moments before, divine power radiating from his massive frame like heat from stellar cores. This was what systematic harvesting of consciousness had purchased. The ability to erase dangers through casual application of force that operated beyond mortal comprehension. The beautiful monster who had saved my life, whose very existence was built on consumption of awareness that had once possessed hopes and dreams, and the capacity to love desperately enough to challenge established order. The mathematics of cosmic economy made manifest in flesh that sustained itself through participation in systems too terrible for complete understanding.
Are you injured?
His voice carried undertones of concern beyond simple property evaluation, divine authority that had been enhanced through consumption of refined consciousness, expressing something approaching genuine care for mortal welfare.
I looked up at amber eyes that blazed with power purchased through systematic processing of individual identity, seeing depths that reflected both terrible necessity and growing recognition that some prices extracted by cosmic authority demanded moral accounting beyond bureaucratic convenience. "I'm alive," I whispered, the words carrying weight beyond their simple meaning. Alive while thousands of people were turned into components that would sustain divine existence according to schedules established by powers whose patience was measured in geological rather than mortal time. The mountain breathed around us with rhythm of intelligence monitoring every exchange of consciousness for resources, every moment when individual awareness encountered forces that operated beyond the limitations of single-planet existence. I was witness to cosmic economy that reduced sentient beings to renewable components in equations balanced through systematic harvesting of everything that made life worth living. The children lived because golden fruit had challenged established order. But the prices extracted for that miracle were about to reshape existence, according to purposes that treated individual identity as inconvenient complication in bureaucratic processes spanning dimensions beyond mortal comprehension. The creature's absence left only scattered atoms and growing understanding that some forms of salvation carried costs that compounded across realities where consciousness itself served as currency in exchanges that sustained divine authority through methods too terrible for complete moral accounting.